Thanks, Wesley. Okay. Hello, folks. Didn't necessarily know if I'd ever be back, but here goes for one. Just recently, Jon Stewart came out of retirement too on Comedy Central, and it didn't take very long for some of the other news people to be giving him down the road for making fun of both sides, basically. So, a guy who, for those of you who maybe don't know, Jon Stewart is a guy on Comedy Central who basically makes fun of the news, in a way. He does more than that, but kind of, so, but he kind of makes fun of his way of telling the news, let's say, is a better way of putting it, is to make fun of both sides, as in the Democrats and the Republicans. So as soon as he came back, he'd been in retirement, I think, for about, 10 years or something. He used to be the host of the full-time host. Now he's come back on Monday night only. After his first day back, all the news people, the news media people, were giving him a hard time about making fun of both sides. They say, well, that's just kind of a joke. It's just a guy making fun of both sides. Well, we know that by default, whenever you've got one guy who's making fun of both of the extreme sides of things, then by default, that guy is your messiah. So as far as I'm concerned, Jon Stewart is the messiah of the news media right now. And secondly, I'd like to say that before I get into all that, I wanted to say that in my brief hiatus, if anybody watches this, we have had a baby, and I was starting to figure some things. My message for a very long time has been the message of the cusp of Pisces and Aquarius. That is to say that I don't really particularly like Pisces or Aquarius, or I like Pisces and Aquarius, whichever way you want to take it. And that all relates to the message, because, the message people are Pisces and the Don Parnell people are Aquarius. But because their messages relate to each astrological age, basically, at this point. So, but anyway, I wasn't exactly sure. Whenever we went to get started off on the whole baby having process, they give us a due date of when the baby would be born. I wasn't sure. I kind of thought the due date was a little bit out there, and it turned out that it was a little bit off. And I thought at first, well, maybe it'll be an Aries baby. And then I got to thinking, it took me a while, and then I got to thinking, no, my message has been the Pisces Aquarius cusp message. So I got to thinking, the baby is going to be a Pisces Aquarius cusp. And sure enough, that's exactly what he is. He was born on the 20th of February, and which is almost exactly on the cusp. I think it's 1 day off. 1 day on the Pisces side off, as I recall. So anyway, I kind of figured that out, and I got to thinking about it. I thought, because once you get to figuring how these things roll, then you can figure things before they happen, if you're good at it. But usually you can't. Usually you can, but you can't. It's funny how things work, but usually you could figure it out, but you don't know exactly how it's going to happen. You can predict it in a general sense, but you can't figure out how it's going to happen. That's how all prophecy works. Like a sage or a prophet. They can usually predict things, but they don't know, because they're smart enough to know the ages and the signs of things. But they can't predict just exactly how it's going to happen. So it's usually even a surprise, I think, to them as to exactly how it happens. But they can give you a general theme. So, and that's what I've tried to do for a very long time, is to give you all a general theme of what I see is going to happen, because I have this ability to do this. And I can't tell you how it's going to happen, but I know that it's going to be a general theme of how it's going to happen. I've done this a few times already, and my general themes were correct. So anyway, so I got to thinking, I'm like, okay, so if this is going to be, I had it figured out that it was going to be a Pisces Aquarius cusp baby, and I'm like, or he was going to be, and I thought, well, okay, so I'm going to predict that he's going to be 7.9 pounds, because whenever he's born, because as Don Parnell said, the age of Aquarius was thought to have started in 1997. So I was like, okay, well, I could. I don't think he's going to be 9.7 pounds, but he could be 7.9 pounds, and because he's right on the whole thing is in the middle. That's the whole point. It's neither this nor that. That's what I've been trying to say for forever. And so anyway, I was like, okay, well, he'll be 7.9 pounds. It'll be 90. It'll still be a 9 and a 7, 97. And turned out he was. See, this is where it throws you for a loop. I was on the right track, but it threw me for a loop. It turned out he was 6.9 pounds, and I was like, oh, okay, the yin and the yang. That's the whole point. The yin and the yang, in between the. Yin and the yang symbol means the confluence, I guess, of all things together in equality, Eastern religions and whatnot. Well, that's pretty much what we're doing here. So the yin and the yang. So he's yin and the yang baby, born on the cusp of Pisces and Aquarius. And anyway, I was like, well, where's this 97 going to be? And whenever they took his temperature, which I realized this would be a common temperature to have, but whenever they took his temperature, it was exactly 97, what was it, 97.9, so that would be 997, 1997. So I was like, oh, okay, there it was. So it was his temperature. But, so anyway, so he's, my baby boy in there is the confirmation, or the existence of my message. He's the physical type of my message. So anyway, moving into some things. Speaking of, basically, in short, if you have, we know by typological default that if you have two opposing sides, then the Messiah figure or the Christ message is always in the middle of those two. That's just how it works. Pharisees, Sadducees, John the Baptist, and Jesus. Okay. Or just Pharisees, Sadducees, Jesus. He's in the middle, he's neither one. Okay, that's how it works. Okay, William Branham, Baptist, Pentecostals, William Branham. I mean, this is, ABCs of the message, right? Should be anyway. So anyway, just by default, if the guy's in the middle, well, he's by default the Christ character compared to those two sides, whatever situation it may be comparing it to. So I'd like to talk about another one. Essentially what you have there is the quote-unquote third party. And so you should know that whenever you have two extreme sides, or two denominations, or two parties, or two whatever, that in a two-party system, essentially, then you should know that whenever a third-party candidate comes up, then by default, this guy has to be the Christ figure to those two. That's just the way it is. So, I've been watching some stuff on a guy named Robert Kennedy Jr., who is running for president. I'm sure you all probably heard of him. And as far as I can tell, he is absolutely the Christ figure of politics right now, being the third-party candidate. He is running on the ticket of third party, essentially. He's the major polling third-party candidate as far as I know. So that puts him in this position of the Christ figure. Now everybody can go and holler Donald Trump all they want to. Donald Trump is running as a Republican, so he does not fit the Christ figure criteria in this way, at least. Now, in some other way, well, perhaps, but I'll leave that to everybody else. But in this way, at least, Robert Kennedy meets the criteria because he is neither running as a Republican or a Democrat. And I find a lot of the things that he is saying to relate so very well to the message situation as it stands, or our spiritual Democrats and Republicans, which is what we've had. So I was listening to Robert Kennedy the other day, and he was talking about well, there was a few things, if I can remember half of them, because it just kind of, every time I listen to him, it just blows me away as to how what he's saying relates to the message. But they've started their own party, by the way. Robert Kennedy has started his own party. It's called We the People. So it's his third party. But We the People, as in refers to what the first words of the Constitution, or preamble or whatever, we the people in order to form a more perfect union, blah, 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 blah. So that's where he got it from. So that's what I believe that we need here in the message is a new party, a We the People party of the message as it stands. And whenever I say I refer to the message, I mean from everything from message people all the way up to Don Parnell. The two ends of the spectrum of what we have here. We need to form a third party that is neither one of these. That is neither one of these ideas, and I'm going to explain this. I'm going to explain this using what Robert Kennedy himself has said. The first one I'll start off with, and maybe the only one I get to, maybe the only one I need, is Robert Kennedy was talking about how that a whole generation of basically like millennials have been disenfranchised because they were not able to afford to buy homes. Basically, if you live in the United States, it used to be that people could buy homes. People had enough money, housing prices weren't extremely high. Maybe wages weren't all that great, but at least there was a possibility that you could do it. There's all kinds of other reasons why now that the average working person cannot afford a home. But back in the day, you could afford a home. The average person could afford at least some sort of some property of their own. But now that's been made impossible during the generation of the millennials for the housing crisis and everything else. My generation, basically, you couldn't afford a home. So anyway, here's what I've discovered. He got me to thinking about something there. Here's the situation of what we've ended up with the millennials now, and the millennials are the ones I'm talking to. I'm not really talking to the old heads of the message, whether it's on either sides. To me, there's a group out here of younger people that I'm talking to, and that's exactly what Robert Kennedy said. He said, we're not doing very good with the old people. We're not doing very good with the baby boomers. I'm not really talking to baby boomers out here. My message is for millennials. My message is for 30-somethings. Or 40-somethings, or 20-somethings, or maybe even younger, or whatever, maybe a little older, whoever will hear. But it's a different message for just like Robert Kennedy's message. It's a different message that should appeal to the younger crowd. Maybe not the youngest crowd, maybe the youngest crowd too, but definitely not the older people. So I don't expect older people to like my message. I don't expect, and when I mean older, I mean older in terms of not only their age physically, or that may or may not matter, but older in terms of their philosophies upon the message. So, anyway, I'm moving on. Okay, so but he was talking about how this whole generation had been disenfranchised and does not own their own property, cannot have land or anything. I often say that in the Philippines, a person is better off in the Philippines than they are in America, even though that, and I use the Philippines because I've been there a couple times. I got a fairly rough idea what it's like there, even though I haven't lived it. But I just find it funny that people in the Philippines, they have a comparatively lower wage, but they could theoretically, they have a better opportunity, I think, to own land than we do here. And this is supposed to be, the promised land, the great America, right? Well, not so much apparently. So anyway, but here's what's happened. Given this situation, here's what's came of it, and it's exactly what's came of the message. What you have is, as far as millennials, is they are in one of two places. They are either A, living with their mom and dads in their basements, or their grandpas, living with their grandma and their grandpa in their basement, or their mom and dad in their basement. Okay, because see, mommy and daddy had enough money to buy a home, or the housing market allowed them to buy a home back in 1960 when, or grandma and grandpa in 1960 when, or whatever. Okay, so, or 1980 when, even up to the 80s you could buy a home, maybe even the 90s, right? So mom and dad had enough money. They have homes. They have, a big home with a basement even big enough to house a youngin, as we would say, house their offspring, their kids. Okay, so you've got A. So you've got millennials living in their mom and dad's basement. Okay, and then B, they couldn't afford, if they did get out of their mom and dad's basement and they were willing to move out on their own and try to go out and make a go at it on their own, then what did they do? They did what we've got here. They live in an apartment and they rent an apartment, because you can't, or they might rent a house or something. If they ain't renting an apartment, it's probably an apartment, because, we're all economically screwed over. But I ain't knocking it too much, but, because I've got a good apartment, so I'm not complaining. But that's the other option. The other option is that they live in an apartment. They rent an apartment or a house. So they don't own that either. Okay. And they're probably getting some sort of government social benefits to even make it, to survive like that. They cannot make it. They can go get a job, a minimum wage job, and work 40 hours a week faithfully, never miss a day, and they still could not even come close to being able to own something on their own, or be able to basically even feed themselves on their own with just that. So they've got government benefits to make up the slack to make it to where they can survive. Okay, so that's your two options. Okay. Then you've got a third option. Well, I'll get to the third option later. Okay, but that's basically where we're at. So now how does all this apply to the message? Well, here's how it works. What you have is you have in the message, you have the message people, Pisces, the Don Parnell people, Aquarius. Okay, and here's how it works. The message people are the children. Like I said, I'm talking about millennials here. Okay, I'm using them as an example. The millennials that are still in the message, people my age or around my age in a rough area. I think I'm like the beginning of the millennials, so this might be like refer to people maybe a little younger than me, even. But those people in the message, those millennials in the message right now, in the brand of message, are essentially living in their mom and dad's basement, in the fact that they are living in mommy and daddy's message. They didn't go out and get a message of their own. They're still living in mommy and daddy's message. They're living in mommy and daddy had the old Branhamite message, and they told their kids, they said, just stay right here with us. Don't go get your own message. Just stay right here with us and live in the basement of our message. And that's exactly what you've got here. You see them all over the place in the message. These kids, these millennials that live right there, that go to church with mommy and daddy, and they don't have a message of their own. Mommy and daddy told them, well, it doesn't matter anyway. You don't need a message of your own. The rapture's going to come and take us all out of here. Their bogus idea of the rapture is going to come and take us all out of here. And well, you know, it really wouldn't do you any good to go and, you know, there's no more messages. What they were saying. There's no more message after William Branham, and the rapture's coming soon, and all these things are just examples of why that they don't have a message of their own. No more message after William Branham, right? So don't go out, little Billy dear. Don't go out and just stay right here with us. Just live in the basement. Our basement's big enough for you to live here, or either they didn't have the gumption to go out on their own anyway, whatever the situation might be. Maybe they realized for whatever reason, a lot of the millennials that live in their mom and dad's basement have realized, gee, I can't do it, because of the situation at hand, or I don't really even want to try, or maybe I would try, but the economic condition's so screwed up, I'm just not even going to bother. For whatever reason, that's not the point. The point is that they're living in their mom and dad's basement. Okay, these people, these millennials in the message, are living in the basement of William Branham's message, essentially, or what they thought was William Branham's message, the message version of William Branham's message, which was never right, but whatever. Okay, so anyway, so they live in the basement of what they thought William Branham's message was. They don't have any reason to leave because they were told, A, the rapture's coming, A, B, C, D. The rapture's coming, well, okay, you get the point. No more message after William Branham anyway, just stay here in our basement. Okay, and that's what you got. It's a mentality. It's a spiritual mentality of staying in mom and dad's basement. Okay, it's a physical mentality of these millennials staying in their mom and dad's basement economically out here. And, mommy and daddy takes care of them. And, and they couldn't make it on their own. And mommy and daddy takes care of them. And they live in their mom and dad's basement, and they're living physically right there. So they're still, sucking on the thumb. That's the way the message is that, they're just sucking on the thumb, or sucking on sucking on their mom and dad, sucking on their mom's tit still. 30 years old and still sucking on their mom's tit. Okay, so anyway, spiritually speaking, that's what it is. It's pretty despicable, honestly. It's a despicable situation that should happen, or in the physical or the spiritual. It's despicable, but that's the way that it works. That's the way that it is. So anyway, so that's one side of it. Then here's the other side of it. Here's the other side of the millennials. You just think about how stupid it looks for a 30-year-old man to be living in their mom and dad's basement. I mean, how ridiculous is that? And that's what I see. That's what I see when I look at these message people out here. That they're like, you don't have a message of your own, But anyway, see, in the days of William Branham, when mommy and daddy bought their house, you could buy a house, spiritually speaking, because it was a message, right? You could buy that spiritual message. You had the buying power to do it. Okay, so but as time went on, I mean, even if it was never right the way that they looked at it, but whatever. As time went on, well, it's those old houses that were built back in the 50s and 60s in William Branham's time. They're getting old now, but they were big houses with a big basement, So these millennials, these message millennials, are living in the big basement of the big good message that persisted, but it's getting old now. Okay, so wood's starting to rot, termites starting to eat it, but it's still hanging in there, and the basement, it was a big message, so it's got a big basement, so you could survive in the basement. Okay, so that's where they're at. Now, here's the opposite side of it, the equal opposite side. Was it Newton who said that for every action there's an equal but opposite reaction? I believe it was Newton. So anyway, I find that to be more and more true every day. So here's the equal opposite reaction to the whole thing. And just like that you can never get the message people to understand what I just said, they will never allow for such a comparison. They will never believe that. The side I'm getting ready to talk about now, they just will not believe this. These two sides are, these polar opposite sides I'm talking about here are not supposed to see this. They're not supposed to get this, because if everybody did, then I wouldn't be able to make this message. So I don't expect them to understand what I'm saying. There'll be just a few, maybe. If we're lucky, we'll get a few that'll maybe understand this. I hope, at least, because I'm a little tired of not having anybody to talk to. It'd be nice to have somebody to talk to out here who got it, because I have very few people that have ever seemed to get much of anything of it, and I've been saying this for years and years and years. Okay, so anyway, it'd be nice, but we'll see. So anyway, so here's the equal opposite side of it. So you got message people, millennials living in their mom and dad's basement. Here's the other side. Like I said, either the millennials are living in their mom and dad's basement, or they're renting, but they never own anything, right? Okay, or they are renting. Okay, so they rent an apartment, they rent a house, okay, and they live on social benefits from the government to make up the difference of what they can't pay for themselves, right? Okay, simple, all right, okay, which is just equally as bad. The whole point of things is that, see, this is where you get into Republican and Democrat ideology. Republican ideology, which is the message ideology, is capitalism at all costs, Hooverism. You know, it's like, well, we'll let people starve to death in the name of capitalism. We'll let, in the name of capitalism, paying too much for houses or whatever, before we'll get involved in this and change anything, we will just let everybody, all the millennials live in their mom and dad's basement. Okay, we'll let you starve to death in the name of capitalism. You know, it's, okay, so that's Republicans. That's how it works. Democrats, on the other hand, their idea is that, you know, we'll have social benefits. This all goes back to Hoover and FDR, if you know history. FDR brought in all the New Deal stuff, all the everybody was starving to death due to the Great Depression. And the Republicans looked at it as though, well, this is just boom and bust time. Capitalism is how it works. And the Democrats were like, wait a minute, we're not. The Democrats weren't communists, for Christ's sake. They were capitalists themselves, but they were like, yeah, okay, yeah, capitalism, yeah, but they're on the same hand, we can't let these people starve to death. Okay, so that's the Democrat idea is that we've got to we'll have social programs to make up the difference, so they at least don't starve to death. They might not have any. We might not make it to where they're going to have a house of their own, but we'll make it to where they'll be able to rent a house of their own. You know. So it's an artificial life. It's an artificial existence. Renting is an artificial existence from owning. Okay, the social programs to make up the difference for what you should have been able to make theoretically from working a 9-to-5 job is an artificial income. Okay, so it's an artificial supplement of income. Okay, so it's all artificial, but it's just freely given to you in a sense. And you used to have to work for it. But now it's, half of it's just given to you. Social benefits just given to you. And then what you got is you got a lot of people that just have found a way to ride it, which is equally opposite as bad. And, you got people over here, well, they couldn't afford it. And then you found, and people are working their tail ends off and still couldn't afford it. And then you've got people over here that don't work at all and just have managed to find some way to just, work it, weave it to where they don't hardly work at all, and then they've got everything handed to them. Okay, all right. That is Aquarius. If you know Aquarius people, you'll understand this. That is the Don Parnell side of things. Here's how all this works. For example, in Pisces, you could work your ass off all your life and have a loaf of bread to show for it. You could have, uh, well, in a sense, okay. I'm not saying, that's one way of looking at it. What I'm saying is that you could work in Pisces. You could work, and if you had things, then you would have something quality, but you wouldn't necessarily have much of it. Let's say, like for example, we have things now that people would have dreamed of having 50 years ago, right? But people 50 years ago had quality things that honestly we would dream of having now. They had homes, okay, but they didn't have maybe a lot of luxuries. Now we got luxuries everywhere, but we don't have homes. It's the equal opposite. Everything here is the equal opposite of the way it used to be. It used to be that we had a very little bit of food. It's lucky if you had food, but if you had food, it was good quality food. Okay. Now, food is in abundance, basically, but it's artificial, sugarized, shitty food. It's corn syrup. I went to get some ham the other day. I'm not going to mention the brand because it did taste good at least. Well, I expect it would with full of corn syrup. But I looked on the ham. It's ham, for Christ's sake. Ham. Okay? It's good old-fashioned pork, right? And I looked on the package and it's like, this is mixed with like 35% other ingredients other than ham. And I'm like, you mean to tell me it's only 65% ham? And I looked and the next ingredient was corn syrup. So it's essentially sugar, right? So they're putting sugar in ham. Okay, this is Aquarius. This is how it works. If you get it, everything's in abundance now. It's basically free in a sense. The social benefits, the Democrat social benefits, they're all free, okay? But it's all artificial compared to what we had. And if you know Aquarius people, I have studied Aquarius people because I know what age we're in here, okay? I got to learn them so that I can learn what we're dealing with here. If you know Aquarius people, they are the funniest people in the world. I don't know why. I told my mom the other day, I'm like, all of my friends my whole life have either been Pisces or Aquarius. So I guess that's been useful, to be able to get an idea as to what I'm dealing with here in the spiritual. It's a training process. We all go in your daily life, you go through a training process so that you can understand these things and so that I can preach these things to you. Okay? Because I'm telling you something good here if you all listen to me. All right? So I'm telling you it from an educated perspective too. I have always had friends that were either Pisces or Aquarius for whatever reason. So I've studied them. And the Aquarians are so funny because what they do is it's unreal. It's like life just gives them stuff. It's the craziest thing you ever seen. I mean, it's like they don't, they're not really concerned about working for anything. They're not too concerned about whether things go good or bad or whatever. It's just like that life just gives them an existence. Like, for example, a Pisces will work themselves to death. My Pisces, my best friend early for a while there growing up was a Pisces, and he worked and worked and worked, man. You're talking about a worker. Worked and worked and worked. Okay? Now, and then my one of my best friends now is an Aquarius, and he's like the total opposite. He's like that life just gives him stuff. It's like it's the funniest thing. It's just like he don't work for it. He works, but it's like life is just trying to just give him stuff. It's the craziest thing, by contrast. And so that's what I'm saying is that where it used to be that it was the old Pisces age was work, the works. Then now it's in the Aquarius age, everything's a free gift. It's artificial. See, back then it was work, and have something real good in quality. Like a Model T Ford, buddy. You could take a hammer to it and you couldn't kill it. And that was back in Pisces. And you had to work for it. $5 a day at the old Ford factory, but you could work and get you one. And buddy lasted 20, 30 years probably. And now Now we're in Aquarius, and it's the opposite. It's like everything is no good quality. It's all artificial. Everything's artificial. Food's artificial, everything. But here you go. It's like, you can live in an artificial life. Here's your apartment. It's like, it's not, you don't own it. It's artificial. It's rented. It's artificial. But hey, we're going to pay half of your apartment bill here because you have low income, because everybody's got low income. So we're going to give it to you. We're going to give this to you. It's artificial, but it's free. Okay, that is Aquarius. It's artificial, but it's free. Okay, so what I want you all to understand is that the Don Parnell side of things, everybody thought that it was a solution to the problem because we had a problem. Okay, we had a problem of, the old Piscean ways. There were problems there, just like with everything. Then we got up into the Don Parnell message side of things, and we said, well, here's what we got. We got a bunch of millennials living in their mom and dad's basement. Okay, so we've got to come up with some sort of solution to this. We got a bunch of spiritual people out here that are still stuck in the old Branham, what they thought the way the Branham message was. Okay, so we got to come up with something here to have a solution to this problem. And here's what they did. We had Don Parnell. Okay, Don Parnell came up with essentially the free gift solution. It's an artificial free gift solution message, the Aquarius message. Anything that he says, he's an Aquarian himself, but that may or may not apply to people. Just because you're whatever sign, doesn't really matter. But you could get anything. But it just stands to reason. His version of things is the Aquarius message. All the people that believe roughly what he believes, they're believing that Aquarius message. And the Aquarius message is artificial. It was an artificial solution. It was an artificial free solution to what we had, to the problem that we had. Because it became that, everything's a free gift, essentially. I hate to make it sound like old grace message or something, but in a sense, it's a free gift that, hey, you are the Christ, so it's freely you. It's but it's got an artificialness to it. It made everything artificial. It took the quality out of things in the process. And that's more difficult for me to explain to you, but I know that it did it because I know that it's the Aquarius message. All I got to do is look at the natural and know what the spiritual is doing. Now, I see it oftentimes, and if I had a good example to you right now, I'd explain it to you a little better, but I don't. But maybe sometime I will. But nonetheless, you get the point. You should be able to get the idea here that the Don Parnell side of it is an equal opposite of the Pisces side. So if Pisces was good quality, but hardworking, good quality, then the other side, the equal opposite side, has to be free gift, and artificial quality. Okay, it has to be. So that's what we've had. This third coming and on up message, this Aquarian message here, it's got an artificial, it's artificial. It's artificial and it's free, but it's free. It's free and artificial. Okay. So, and they cannot see this. I have tried to get this across. They cannot see this. They're blinded to it for some reason. I don't know. It must be they have to be blinded to it for me to be able to preach this message, to say what I'm getting ready to say. Just like the Pisces side of it, they're blinded to it so that Don Parnell could come and preach his message. Because if they weren't blinded to it, then he would not have been able to do that. And what I want to say is before I get to ragging too bad on it, on the Aquarian side, I do want to say this. If they did a good thing, because I would not want to be living in my mom and dad's basement anymore. Okay, I did that. All right, I eventually got out and was able to get an apartment of my own with, whatever, social benefits or whatever, and with all the Aquarian social benefits, and or a lot of people have. I might not be the best example there, but a lot of people have done this. And with the food stamps, and with all the Democrat social programs, the Aquarian Democrat social programs. Okay, FDR was an Aquarian, by the way. All right, so anyway, with all the Democrat social programs of Aquarius, of that mentality, I was able to get out and at least have an artificial life and have artificial food. Whereas beforehand, I would have been dependent on mommy and daddy, and been in a terrible bad shape in a basement of, I would have been spiritually I was spiritually in a condition of living in mom and dad's basement, in mom and dad's messages basement, dependent on mommy and daddy to give me some sort of food or whatever. Okay, and then Don Parnell come along and said, here's you some housing and urban development help. Here's you some social programs that will allow you to get out of your mommy and daddy's message and get your own artificial life. Get your own artificial food. It's all going to be artificial, but because that's just the inherent nature of Aquarius, but you can have it. Okay? You can, it's all yours. And you could say, well, which is better? Living in an artificial apartment or living in your mommy and daddy's basement? Well, I'm not really saying anyone's any better, but I will say this. This is the more progressed way, because there's something to be said, I think, for the progression of progressing out of mom and dad's basement into the artificial apartment, even if the artificial apartment wasn't really the solution. Okay, it's not the grand solution to things. We millennials need our own homes. Okay, that's what Robert Kennedy was saying. This whole generation's been disenfranchised because we haven't had our own homes. We've lived in mommy and daddy's basement. We've lived in the artificial apartment, the rented apartment. We need our own homes. We need to be able to afford our own homes. Okay, we need our own message. The millennials need our own message. We millennials in the message need our own message, not the message people's message, not Don Parnell's message. We need our own message. Okay? And that is exactly what I propose to you today, is that we have our own message. We need our own house. Listen, I am very thankful. I would probably have starved to death if it had not been for the Democrat ideas of food stamps and whatever else social benefits that I have, heating assistance, whatever. I'd have froze and starved to death. I wouldn't even be here preaching this message to you right now if it weren't for the Democrats having come up with all that stuff. Okay? So I appreciate that. And I appreciate the Aquarian message that Don Parnell brought us that kept us as millennials from, if we weren't willing to live in our mom and daddy's basement because we wanted out, okay, then, and having to listen to mommy and daddy because you got to be your own man. So we didn't want to do that no more. So when we heard Don Parnell, whenever we heard this idea that, hey, we could get these social programs and go live in an apartment on our own, we were like, yeah, let's go. We're tired of mommy and daddy. We're tired of that old message. So I appreciate all that. I appreciate that we were brought out of all that. And we come over here. And we came over into Don Parnell's message. And we had an artificial rented existence and had food stamps. And even when I was a young man, we lived on food stamps. And we lived. We lived. It might have been artificial. We wasn't making all the money on our own, but it was artificial, and the government was supplementing it, and we lived. And that's Aquarius, and that's Don Parnell's message, and we lived. We're alive now. We didn't freeze to death, okay? We didn't freeze and starve to death. We've eaten sugarized stuff, overly sugarized stuff, but we're still alive, okay? So I appreciate all that. Okay, I'm not saying nothing against it. I'm not even saying nothing against mommy and daddy, because mommy and daddy was going to let us live in their basement. They were going to tell us how to do everything, because when you live under mommy and daddy's thumb, that's the way it is, right? Okay, but they were going to let us live there. So I'm not even going to give the message of Pisces a hard time. Like I said, I like them as much as I don't like them. I like Pisces and Aquarius as much as I don't like them. Okay, I like them and I don't like them. Just depends on, I can come back tomorrow and I'll be fussing about them. Today, maybe I'm be like, okay, I appreciate the things they did for us, right? So both of them, okay. But to say all that was, and they will not get that. I've tried. There's a block there, but there has to be a block there. You have to have Pharisees and Sadducees. You have to have denominational Baptists and Pentecostals. You have to have Democrats and Republicans. You have to have all these people to have a Messiah. And they are playing their parts properly. Okay? You cannot have what I'm getting ready to tell you without them doing what they're doing. I can't come without them doing what they're doing. Okay? It can't be an interesting thing if they get it. They can't get it because it wouldn't work. This whole thing wouldn't work. So here is the situation. We need our own home. Let me explain. I want to explain a little bit of my own personal life here, and I'll get to this all gonna make sense. Let me explain to you what we do now. If you've come this far with me, let me explain to you what we do now. See, Robert Kennedy running third-party candidate. This is the example. This is the political example of what we have to do. Okay? He started his own party, the We the People Party. Well, I suggest that we start our own party, the We the People of the Message Party, and we refrain from being either message people or Don Parnell people, for lack of better termage. Well, let's refrain from being Pisces, and let's refrain from being Aquarius. Let's be our own message. Let's start our own message. Robert Kennedy's going around all over the country right now trying to get his name on every ballot in each state. You know, he's got to go through a process before he can even get on the ballot in each state so that people could vote for him for president this year. Now, I'm not saying he'll win come November, but the point of all this is still taken. Okay. What we've got to do is we've got to put our name on the ballot in each state. We've got to at least be on the ballot. This idea that I am presenting to you that is neither message, is neither Don Parnellian, it's got to be on the ballot. I want it on the ballot. I've been trying to say this for years. I want this message to be on the ballot with those two. Okay? Now, if you want to go vote Democrat, you want to go vote message, and if you want to go vote, or if you want to go vote Republican and you want to vote message, or if you want to vote Democrat and you want to vote Don Parnell, that's the equivalence of what they are. Then fine. Okay? But I want this on the ballot. I want the third party candidacy of what we're saying, what I'm saying here on the ballot. I want Robert Kennedy on the ballot. I want you to be able to vote for Robert Kennedy if you want. I want this message that is neither Pisces or Aquarius. I want it on the ballot. I want the Pisces Aquarius cusp message that I call this on the ballot. I want you to be able to vote for this, and that's why I'm preaching this today. That's why I'm telling you all this, because I'm putting it on the ballot. I'm creating a new party here, and I'm putting it on the ballot. Okay? I want you to have heard it so that if you want to, you can vote for it. That's what I want. I want you to hear this. I want somebody needs to hear this. You know, I get blowed up all the time with this stuff. It comes to me and it needs to be put out. And so anyway, so I wanted to tell one last little thing here. Here is my personal life of what I've been through as far as housing goes. See, the third party candidate, he's the guy that don't, historically, theoretically, don't, as we would put it, don't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning, right? Okay, that's pretty much how it works, right? Okay, Jesus, what was Jesus? Jesus, he had all these Pharisees and Sadducees, and then you had Jesus. Well, hell, he didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning, did he, right? Who's William Branham? You got Baptists and Pentecostals everywhere all over the country. You got William Branham. Well, he didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting of winning with his message, did he? Okay, well that's the way it's got to be, and it's got to be that just when you thought there's no chance, that you at least get it out there and you at least try it. And it might take thousands of years, but eventually it might turn into something. It's like Jesus. Well, it took a long time, but hey, turned out, gee. And then William Branham. Well, it might take a long time. Most people still never even heard of William Branham, but give it time. Who knows what this might be in 500 years, maybe 1,000 years. He might be a household name. Just like Jesus, household name now, right? Of course, nobody, what they think Jesus is now and what he really was is totally different. But, hey, at least he's heard of, right? Okay, so theoretically. So anyway, here's what happened to me in my own personal life. I moved out of Mommy and Daddy's basement, went and got me an apartment, and it just so turned out that I got to thinking, well, I guess I'll never get out of this apartment. I'll never be able to go do anything. The economic condition is just too bad, right? You can't go build your own house because even if you could buy a cheap piece of land, and there's so many government things, things like government things like you've got a what's it called, building codes. You got to have so many building codes to make sure that this house, and it costs you so much time and money to do it just exactly the way they want it. It's just they made it impossible. They made it impossible. Okay, you don't have the time or the money to do it. Okay, you'd have to pay somebody else to make sure it's up to code, and then it just ain't gonna happen. Okay, it's just impossible. So there was only one little way that a person might be able to get their own home here. And I found it. The only way that you can do it is I got me a little piece of land. And I've got a trailer already on it. It's not in good condition, but if I work on it myself, I can make my own piece of property. Okay, so in the middle of just what I thought would never happen, of just in the middle of everybody, of all these millennials living in their mom and dad's basement, in the middle of everybody living in an apartment getting social benefits to make it, okay, I have found just barely, just like when you pave over a parking lot and you think all the grass is gone, and there comes up one little flower, just that one little flower that come out of the whole parking lot there. I have found the one little flower. I have found me a little piece of land that just happened to have an old grandfathered trailer on it. That's it's kind of like it's already. I don't have to deal with trying to keep up with the building codes because it's already done. I don't have to. It didn't cost. It's not a cost issue because it's just. It was nothing. It's not even money involved in it. Basically, it's just no money involved. It's just money was not an issue. Is what I'm saying. Money was not an issue to get it because it's to do something like that. Money's not an issue because it's just so dirt ass cheap. Pardon my French. That or maybe even somebody give you something like that. Like basically in my situation. But money's not an issue. Government. What did I call it earlier? Where you got to meet up to the standards. You got to meet up to the standards of all the government standards. That was not an issue. Okay, so I've managed to be able to get. But what I got to do is, and I can't pay nobody else to work on it. I got to do it myself because I ain't gonna have enough money. I won't have enough money to build that house if I pay somebody else to do it. I got to do it myself. So that's what I'm telling you all, folks. I'm in a process right now of working on and building up my piece of land to have property in this age where nobody thought it was possible. That a minimum wage earner, basically, that nobody thought that you could have property of your own. And I've managed to get it. And I've got to build it. But I've got to build it. I've got to spend the time myself to do it. Okay? So what I'm telling you is that in this age, you had the message, you had Don Parnell's side of things. To me, nobody thought that there would ever be anything outside of those two. That, there is. I believe that there's just that little flower popping up in between the cracks of the paved over message side and Don Parnell's side that paved over the whole thing. And we thought, well, no flower would ever be able to grow here. I believe the little flower's just coming up here. But you've got to build it yourself. It's you. You've got to understand this, and you've got to build this message yourself. They all built their messages themselves. William Branham did the same thing. He came out whenever nobody thought that there could be a message in between Baptists and Pentecostals. Here comes William Branham and builds his own message. Here comes Don Parnell whenever all the message ruled the world. And William Branham was the last prophet, and there's nothing to come, and we're all just waiting on the rapture. Here comes Don Parnell and builds a message where nobody thought you could do it. Built a message outside of that, outside of all the message ideas from left to right, and built a message when nobody thought you could do it. And here comes the third coming. Okay, well, I propose we do it again. But you have to build it yourself. You have to do what they did. You have to do what the pioneers, William Branham and Don Parnell, did. You have to build the message yourself. And that's what I'm doing. I'm building a message myself. This is not Mommy and Daddy's message. This ain't Don Parnell's message. This ain't William Branham's message. This is my message, and it's your message if you hear me. Build it yourself. Build your own message yourself. Don't have the artificial life there. Don't be in Mommy and Daddy's basement. Build the message yourself. Let's build a message ourselves here, people. Let's do what they did. Let's venture out into the wilderness and let's start building a cabin ourselves. Let's venture out into the wilderness of the message that we have not been into, the frontier. We went into the frontier whenever we went into all the other things. But there's more frontier. There's even more frontier. Let's go on out. Let's go on out and let's find and let's start building a cabin. Let's start building a civilization of our own on out into the West. Okay? If we thought we had ventured into the West in William Branham's message, we had ventured into the West into Don Parnell's message. Now let's go even farther west. Let's go on out, and let's here. I'm first man out here. I'm building a cabin. If I am the first man out here, if there's anybody else out here, well then come and find me and let me know. All right. Well, we'll trade cheese and butter. All right. But I'm the first man out here. I'm putting my cabin up, and I'm telling you all, I'm building the fort out here. And if anybody wants to come from all what's already been civilized, what's already the civilization of Don Parnell's message, the civilization of the message on back, okay, if any of you all want to come on out here and come on out into the West, then you are happily stay in my fort and go out and build you a life of your own. Build you build the message as you see fit, and help me build the civilization out here. I got the fort started here. Come, stay in the fort. Do what you got to do. Stay in the fort at nighttime. Go out and build during the day and come back. Okay, until you get your cabin built, and then you can go out and have kids of your own and do whatever you got to do. If spiritually speaking, that's what I'm telling you. Okay, here's the fort. This is Fort Cook right here. Is what this is. And if any of you all want to come out from Messagism and Don Parnellism, then come to Fort Cook right here. And we will build a civilization into the West. Okay? Use this message as a place to build from. Okay? The last thing I would like to say is that I could say this or I could not, I guess. I thought that was a pretty good message so far. See, what was I thinking of? I can take a minute to breathe, right? I've been preaching pretty hard for a while here. Let me let me breathe some air. I'm just so happy to be able to talk to you all. If anybody's listening to this, I'm so happy to be able to talk to you, because this is overjoyous to me. This is, whenever I get these revelations myself, just be driving down the road in my car and I just about wreck the car, because it's like, oh my goodness, man, that's to come up with to understand this, to see that you have a chance to go out on your own and do something that they did, that you have the opportunity now, that there's a little glimmer of hope that you could go and make your own message. I'm making my own message. I don't want Don Parnell's message. I want my own message. You see, I want to do something of my own. And, to me, there should be some people out there that they want that too. There's a lot of people, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are like, well, I don't want to go to all the trouble of building, going through all the hard work of trying to get a little piece of property. That the only way that you could do it is a poor minimum wage earner, because we're all poor minimum wage earners now. A lot of people would say, well, I'd just rather just live in my apartment and not go through all the hard work and just get my social benefits and go on. If that's what you want to do, fine. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm not saying, if you want to stay in Don Parnell's message, and if you want to stay in the Aquarian side of the message of things, if that's what you want to do, more power to you. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying, if you want to brave the woods of the message, if you want to brave the wilderness of the message, if you want to go out in the backwoods and find you an old trailer, and find you, and find you a little half an acre of land or something, if you're in, and put it in Philippine terms, you can stay in the city if you want, but if you want to go out in the mountains and get you a little piece of land and start building you a bamboo house, then you're my kind of guy, right? Okay, if you want to, in American terms, if you want to go find you an old trailer that's about fell down, and start fixing it up and go live on your own, then you're my kind of guy. And that's the way I am spiritually and naturally. If you're spiritually speaking, if you are the kind of person that does not want to just stay in Don Parnell's message, and you want to go out and find a message of your own, then you are my kind of guy. But they're fine. But that's what I've always been doing, is I want a message of my own. Their message won't do it for me. I got to have a message of my own. I got to do my own thing. And so anyway, I think it's good. I think that's pretty good. So I'm happy to be able to spend this time with you, and thank you for listening. Whatever, hell, I ain't going to go through all that jazz. If you get it, you get it. Whatever, it's just cool beans. Whatever, man. See you later.